Ever stop to think about, like, what actually holds the world together? No, I'm talking, like, physically. Bridges, airplanes, even the filter in your coffee maker, chances are woven wire mesh is involved somewhere.
It's one of those things you don't think about, right? But it's everywhere.
Exactly. And today, we're doing a deep dive into the people who make those woven wire components, wire weaving machine operators. We've got some really cool insights from RoleCatcher's career guide for this field.
It's more in demand than people realize.
Right. You'd think it's just feeding metal into a machine, but RoleCatcher really emphasizes the skill involved. It's this blend of technical know-how and almost like an artist's touch.
There's definitely an art to it, knowing how different metals will behave, how the tension needs to be.
And speaking of different metals, what really struck me was how RoleCatcher breaks down the career path. You can go from entry level all the way to like leading a team of operators, and the skills you learn along the way are fascinating.
Yeah, it's like building a career, weave by weave, you know?
I like that. But really, that entry-level stage is crucial because you're not just learning to push buttons, you're developing an intuition for the materials, the machines.
Exactly. And that's not something you can get from a textbook.
RoleCatcher gives the example of a junior wire weaving machine operator who might have a background in mechanical engineering and a specific certification. So they're not just following instructions, they understand the mechanics at play.
And that understanding is key when something goes wrong, right?
Yeah.
Because then it's not just about what button to press, but why it's not working.
Right, it's that problem-solving aspect that really sets it apart. Like imagine a senior operator showing a newcomer the ropes.
See how this alloy stretches more? You got to adjust the tension here, or you'll end up with a wonky filter screen, something like that.
Exactly. It's one thing to read about metal properties, but another to be working with them, hands-on. And as you gain that experience, you move from assisting to independent operation, maybe even training those newcomers yourself. RoleCatcher really highlights that continuous learning.
Which makes sense because the technologies are always changing. I mean, RoleCatcher even talks about how computer-controlled machinery is becoming more common now.
So it's like that classic apprenticeship model, but with a high-tech twist. And this isn't some niche career path either. RoleCatcher points out the high demand for skilled operators.
Yeah, when you think about how many industries rely on woven wire, aerospace, construction, filtration, it's everywhere.
It really is like this hidden backbone to so many things. We see the bridge, but not the people who made sure the materials were woven to, like, withstand incredible stress.
It's a crucial job, and the demand isn't going away anytime soon.
Exactly. And what's also cool is this isn't a career path that's going to be replaced by robots anytime soon.
Nope, those robots still need someone to operate them.
And someone who understands the process, the materials, the subtle adjustments that make all the difference.
Which is what makes this deep dive so interesting, right? We're getting into the nitty-gritty of a career path that's often overlooked, even though it's all around us.
Okay, so it's a skilled trade. It's in demand. It's got this cool blend of old school craftsmanship and cutting edge tech. But RoleCatcher keeps it real about the challenges too, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's not all high-tech automation and perfectly woven mesh. They're upfront about the physical demands of the job.
Right. Like it's easy to forget there's actual physical work involved, right?
Definitely. You're on your feet a lot, often dealing with heavy materials, and depending on the specific tasks, there can be a lot of repetitive motions.
Which, when you think about it, makes the precision involved even more impressive. You're dealing with those physical demands and making sure every weave is exact.
Exactly. It's not a job for everyone.
Hmm.
RoleCatcher uses this great phrase, though, mechanical aptitude, and they highlight that as being really key.
So it's not just about knowing the steps, but like having a feel for the machinery.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You need that intuition for how things work, how to diagnose a problem just by listening,
Hmm.
almost.
It's like those old-time mechanics who could tell what was wrong with an engine just by the sound, right? Except here, it's not an engine. It's this intricate machine weaving metal threads.
And not just any metal threads either, right?
Yeah.
RoleCatcher gets into the importance of understanding the different metals, their properties, because that impacts how you weave them.
Oh, that makes sense. You can't weave something effectively if you don't know how it behaves. Do they give any specific examples in the guide?
Yeah, they talk about things like tensile strength, ductility, even how different alloys react to heat. Like, imagine you're working on the weave that's going to be used in a jet engine component.
Okay, yeah, the stakes just got a lot higher.
Right. You need to know how that metal is going to perform under extreme temperatures and pressure. So suddenly, it's not just about weaving, it's about material science.
Wow. It really shows how much depth there is to this role. You're not just a button pusher, you're making decisions that could impact, like, the structural integrity of something.
And that's what's so cool about this field. There's so much room to learn and grow, to become this incredibly valuable asset.
Hmm.
Because the more you understand those nuances, the more in demand you become as an operator.
And speaking of becoming more valuable, RoleCatcher also talks about staying up to date on new tech, which in a field like this seems pretty important.
Absolutely. Like, they use the example of computer-controlled machinery becoming more common. And that's a whole different ball game.
So it's like you need to be comfortable with the digital interfaces, even some basic programming potentially.
Right. It's not enough to just have those old school mechanical skills anymore.
Yeah.
You got to blend it with that understanding of how the tech works.
It's wild to think about. Like, imagine a wire weaving machine operator from, say, 50 years ago walking into a modern facility today. They'd probably recognize the basic principles, but the level of technology would be mind-blowing.
I know, right? Talk about a steep learning curve.
Yeah.
Which is why I think RoleCatcher's section on interview prep is so key.
Oh, yeah, because it's not just about what you know how to do. It's about how you communicate that, how you show you're adaptable and ready to learn.
Exactly. And that's where those interview questions come in. They want to know you can walk the walk and talk the talk.
Okay, so let's say someone listening to this is intrigued and wants to polish up that resume. What kind of questions should they be ready for? Luckily, RoleCatcher gives some sneak peeks. So hit me with it. What's one of those example questions?
Okay, so one they highlight is, how do you ensure the quality of the wire mesh you produce? It seems simple enough on the surface.
Right, but it's a chance to go deeper than just, I make sure there aren't any holes.
Exactly. It's your opportunity to show you understand the nuances of quality control.
So what would a good answer sound like in that situation?
Well, instead of just listing tasks, you could talk about your process. Like, maybe you use a specific tool to measure wire tension throughout the weave, or you do visual checks at certain points to make sure the consistency is spot on.
And you probably want to mention times you've caught defects early, right? Like, how did you know something was off and what steps did you take? That shows you're engaged, not just going through the motions.
Definitely. They want to see that attention to detail.
Yeah.
That you're not just meeting the minimum standard, but you actually care about the quality of the work you're putting out.
Makes sense, because ultimately that's what it's all about, that finished product. Okay, so that's a more technical question. What about those, like, behavioral ones you mentioned? The ones that really make you think back on your experience.
Right, right. RoleCatcher gives a great example of that. Can you describe a time you had to troubleshoot a complex issue with a wire weaving machine? So they're not just looking for a story about how you fix something, but how you handle those high-pressure situations.
It's like, how do you approach problem solving when things get really hairy?
Yeah, did you stay calm and analyze the situation, or were you just randomly flipping switches hoping for the best? The way you tell that story tells them a lot about how you work.
It's a job interview and a storytelling competition all in one. But honestly, that's the kind of prep I'd want going into a field like this. Because it's so clear, after all this, that being a wire weaving machine operator is about so much more than just pushing buttons.
100%. It's technical skill, problem solving, attention to detail, even a bit of artistry like we talked about.
Mm.
And as technology keeps advancing, those skills are only going to become more sought after.
Which brings us back to that final, thought-provoking point that RoleCatcher makes. They mentioned related careers like wire drawer and wire braider. You know, it really highlights how specialized these manufacturing roles can get.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, as automation takes over more routine tasks, are we going to see even more demand for these hyper-specialized roles in the future? You know, the people who really understand the ins and outs of these very specific materials and processes.
It's a really fascinating question, and one we'll definitely be keeping an eye on as the manufacturing landscape keeps evolving. But for now, huge thanks to RoleCatcher for giving us this incredibly in-depth look at the surprisingly intricate career path.
Yes, thank you to RoleCatcher and to everyone listening for joining us on this deep dive into a world that's often hidden in plain sight. We'll catch you next time.